Hey golfers, and welcome back to the Second Swing YouTube channel for another Live at Lunch. And this one's exciting because I have two master fitters joining. We are in the Bay at Second Swing Minnetonka. Tyler Fitzel's with me, Kevin Kraft is joining remotely. And today we wanted to cover a fun topic that I know both of you guys are excited about, and I think the people watching are also excited about, is just mini drivers. Those are spiking in popularity. Lots of people seem to be getting fit into mini drivers. So as people start to join in here, maybe throw some comments in the chat. I'm going to tee up Tyler first, just to kind of go through what you've seen with mini drivers, why they are so popular right now, and kind of the use cases as well. Because that was actually a question I got on the putting green here earlier today. Someone asked me just, well, like, why are mini drivers being even used? Because what's the point, right? So that's kind of what we're hoping to answer today. Tyler, I'll let you go first here.
You know, when there's a need in our golf bag, right? So we look at everyone's swings a little different, the clubs are a little different, where we play is a little different. When you have something that you need to fill, right? What are the types of clubs we put in? We could talk about it as, you know, why are 7 woods becoming popular, 9 woods becoming popular? They fill kind of a niche or a gap in that bag. So mini drivers, beefed up 3 woods, you know, like it all kind of fits into the same category. We'll talk about as we get going here, but basically it's going to fill some spot in the bag that we have a need for.
Yeah, and Kevin, you've played a mini driver as well. Have been, I know, for most of the time in your professional competition the last couple of years, you've had a mini driver in the bag. So what has that club, what's the purpose that club has served for you, and then what have you seen also in fitting golfers as well?
So for me, I've got this yip tendency with drivers in certain circumstances. So what the mini driver allows me to do is play a club off the tee that I sacrifice 20-25 yards, but it allows me to actually get off the tee where, you know, if I'm trying to force a driver, it's just not going to work out. I've tried too many times and lost too many times. So it really allows me to, you know, get off the tee in an area where I'm not comfortable. And that's one of the prime uses for this golf club, right? Maybe it's a narrow par 4. You want to have a club that's a little bit easier to swing and square up, you know, and you're not going to sacrifice as much as you would hitting, you know, either a 3 wood or a 5 wood off the tee. So you kind of get benefit of both things. What we're seeing in the bays is kind of the same things. You know, it really depends on how a person's trying to use it. If they are, you know, if there's somebody prone to using driver off the deck, then mini driver is a great golf club to have in the bag, because if you can hit a driver off the deck, you can hit a mini driver off the deck a whole lot easier. And it can serve multiple uses. Those who really struggle to hit drivers, that was kind of the reason this whole thing was built in the first place, was to help people get a club that they could get off the tee easier. So there's that one. And then there's the guys that just are looking for something that's a little bit bigger, a little more forgiving, a little more meat on it, to play on those holes where they don't need to hit driver and still want to get it down the fairway. And then they can probably hit those off the deck too. You know, not every one of the mini drivers is out there is really necessarily built to be hit off the deck, but most of them you can hit off the deck.
Yeah, I think that's what we've seen too, is now we're going to hit specifically today the GT280, which to me, of the sort of the newer, you know, 3 models for 2025, to me that's the one that's easiest off the deck. But so Tyler, I've got a 3-wood, the GT3 3-wood. I've got the last year's TSR2 Plus, which would be interesting to test today because that's at 13 degrees and kind of acted as a precursor to the mini driver that Titleist now has released, and then also the GT280. So I want to leave it to you to start. What should we hit first to kind of get this test rolling here?
Well, do you want to hit off the turf?
We can do both. We can do both.
Let's start off the turf. Okay. Let's go with the TSR.
Okay. The TSR2 Plus?
Yep.
Okay.
Then we'll go with the GT3, then we'll go with the GT280.
Okay, I like that.
All right.
And then in terms of shaft, I'll let you figure out too, because we have obviously a few different shafts there that we can play with. And I believe, and I know for the GT280 uses the fairway wood sleeve too, but
it does, yeah.
And
And actually,
we can match those
and
up
it would be the same Yeah, we'll use this. So, you know, for your swing, we talk a little bit about the type of swing speed you carry, and we talk about the club as being a length and strength.
Yeah.
The length isn't going to change on this because it's all the same for the fairway for all three of these options. But
Yeah.
I'm going to put a 75X, which is more appropriate for the type of club speed
Yeah.
that you have.
Yeah, and I believe that's also a 10-1K black, which is the shaft I have in my driver too. So
Yeah, okay.
that will work.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I'm curious. I mean, I haven't hit this club I don't think I've ever hit it, the TSR2 Plus. So for those joining or maybe that aren't familiar, the TSR2 Plus was kind of a strong 3-wood that came with the TSR lineup a couple years ago. I guess, Kevin, as we start building this thing, did you fit a lot of these TSR2 Pluses, or was it a popular club for you in the Bay?
You know, it really wasn't. It seems like the really strong 3-wood options were a little bit more specific than what we're seeing with the mini drivers.
Okay.
I really didn't do a whole lot with them. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it didn't seem like it caught on a ton of momentum in this series, which, maybe they were, in a sense, they were trying to put something together that wasn't quite maybe latching onto the mini driver craze, and it just didn't take off. And now they've got kind of the solution to that, which is the GT280 that we'll talk about. So,
I mean, I always played a strong lofted fairway wood up until the time the mini drivers came out. And I'll tell you what, it's a whole lot easier to hit the mini drivers than it is a very strong lofted 3-wood.
Yeah. I think you're definitely seeing that too. So what we're starting with is off the deck. This is the Titleist TSR2 Plus at 13 degrees standard on the hosel, and then the 75X 10-1K black shaft. We'll see what we can do here. It's a good start right there. Kevin, you mentioned before if we have permission to laugh at me. That'd be permission to laugh.
There we
Yeah,
go.
grounder up the middle.
There we go. Perfect. Round one.
That one's better.
So one of the questions we have rolling in, and I'll get to it here, is from Chris Plays Golf. And what about a driver with a 3-wood shaft? And that's, I think, a great, as you're hitting a couple of shots, just maybe talk about this while you're hitting a few. The length of the shaft is important in terms of the balance of the shaft, or the club. So we want to make sure that we have things balanced. Generally speaking, you can't just cut down a driver, but it'd be the same reason as why does an iron work better than a hybrid, or a hybrid work better than a fairway, or a fairway work better than a driver. It usually has to do with length. So as long as you balance the club, and what I mean by that is swing weighting, we don't want to all of a sudden cut down the shaft and get a head weight that's really super light. Now all of a sudden it's kind of making movements we don't necessarily want it to make. We'd say probably the tour average, Kevin, you can speak to this too. I'd say that the driver length on the tours probably 45 or slightly less.
I'd say average, yeah.
Yeah,
I
average.
think so.
What do you think?
It was until Bryson got there.
Well, yeah.
Actually, it used to be a little below 45. Now you are seeing longer lengths. And the heads that we're seeing in drivers are becoming more and more forgiving, and so they're feeling that the length can go longer and they can get more out of it while still having forgiveness. So yeah. I don't think that trend's probably going to change either. So
yeah, I would say in our fitting category, we've got the ability to adjust lengths for every manufacturer. Every manufacturer is going to have what they call their quote unquote standard length. Typically right now in the market, that's about 45.5 to 45.75, maybe even 46 inches, which is the legal limit. From there, you start talking about every manufacturer has like a -1/2 inch. There are some even like, we know Cobra sets out what they call a tour length, which is 44.5 inches. So we have the ability to actually do that testing, and that's a great question because we have those as options. And one of the things that we try to do is we try to balance it. So for instance, if we're talking about Titleist as an example, they have different weights, so you can replace the weights, you can move them to different spots. That kind of creates a balance overall.
Yeah.
Should we take a look at some of the numbers here?
Yeah, I think I would like to request that the first? Oh, you already took the first swing out of there. Good deal. Okay.
No, it actually was so low it didn't register.
Perfect. Okay, that works.
Do you want me to take the one that's out of bounds?
No, I mean, it could be in bounds. It's right on the line there.
Yeah.
So
You can't move that boundary fence, Drew.
yeah, that's true. I'd have to play maybe an awkward swing on that one, but yeah, this is so this was a TSR2 Plus. I already can see I have a tendency to leave it out to the right a little bit that I'd have to adjust for, but I guess I'll let you, Tyler, start on if there's a couple things you see just from the numbers here, and then we're gonna hit a couple other clubs after this, but.
Yeah, one of the first things I always look for in terms of a number of distance is carry distance. I'm looking to see what this does in the air. Mm-hmm. The environment takes over, and that is a much larger factor on the total distance. So from a carry distance perspective, it looks like you're at about 273. You also have some shots up here like 278 or almost 279 and 283. That air distance is going to be an important number for us. I see really good club speed, really good ball speed, smash factor 150, so we've got the ball moving as fast as it can, really good launch and really good spin. So from let's call it, this is a beefed up 3-wood, if you will. This is I'd call this kind of well, we know that this is the predecessor to the GT280.
Yeah.
It's like they wanted to develop something that was a little bit bigger. You could maybe use it off a tee, use it off the ground. So we did that. I think we leave that ground stuff. We'll do tee stuff separately.
Yeah, let's just start with hitting these three quick off the deck, and then we'll go. I'll make a point too, just in terms of appearance. It definitely looks like a large 3-wood, and it's just slightly deeper, but it still is a lot closer to a traditional 3-wood look than than for sure like a mini driver would be. But
right.
I don't know, Kevin, quickly, any thoughts on my first few swings there that you see from the TSR2
after that
Plus?
first one, things look pretty good. Yeah, so I'm looking at things like spin rate, landing angle, and so spin rate for what this club is probably going to be designed to do, going to be very good, right? We want this thing to go a long way. If we're hitting it off the deck and if we're coming into the greens, 36.4 on the landing angle is pretty shallow. So I don't think we have a whole lot of expectation that this ball is going to stop when it lands. So again, kind of like I deal with my mini driver, I can hit it off the deck. I can run it up onto a green at probably 280, maybe even a little longer. But if I've got a wall bunker in front, I'm not going to carry that bunker and make that ball stop. So with this particular one anyway, we kind of saw that same kind of an issue.
Yeah, so I think this would be, if I was playing that club as a club to hit into the green, there would be some challenges for me in a lot of cases trying to keep it on the green, is kind of what you're saying. So now we get to a club that this is kind of where things are going to start to get interesting. GT280, same shaft, is now what we're going with. So the key with this now is it's the same exact loft as the last club, but obviously the face is much deeper.
Yeah.
So
there you go.
What in the I mean we can just show it a little bit, but I mean you can see the big difference there. Also just a little wider too from the looks of it. But so the big difference is like with a mini driver. I mean I'm sure you guys are seeing it in the bays. I know in mini driver testing I've done, the common miss is low on the face, and so the performance on how these clubs do down right here is very important. All right. Off the deck with a GT280.
There you go. That's good.
Wow. There we go.
And,
I saw we got a question too, or a couple comments from SMU Gamer. Says if a mini is not great off the turf, then it is useless for those of us that hit a 460cc off the tee best. Mm-hmm. And then also mentioned the idea of a 460cc driver that pairs with a 3-wood length shaft for mini version. I think I saw or heard of a couple manufacturers doing that for some tour players. Yeah. And then he also makes the mention too of kind of swing weighting that. But that's kind of the purpose of this too, is to show people like, well, if you are struggling with maybe 3-wood or something like that, these are the other options you might have. Is kind of the purpose here.
Well, and that comment in terms of not being great off the turf is kind of useless. Is That's exactly right. In your game, in your bag, if this isn't a great fit, well, then it's not going to work.
Yeah.
And so we talk about where this fits in. Well, it has to fit if we're talking about if you've got tee shots that you want it for, if you have specific holes at your golf course where you say, I know that this is a better fit. But if the turf interaction's not great, well, then it's not a great fit. That's where we would even look at going to like a GT3 or a GT2 in terms of a 3-wood at 13 degrees, and they make a 13 and a half.
All right, that might be in the window.
If if we're in a situation where we only have 14 clubs that are available, right? That's all we're supposed to be carrying. We have to factor in, does a mini driver and a driver, what does that do to the rest of the bag? So, trying to carry a driver, a mini driver, and a 3-wood doesn't necessarily make a whole lot of sense. So something's going to have to give somewhere in that bag. So for me, it's I either carry the mini driver or carry a 3-wood, just depending on what the golf course calls for.
Right. Yeah, that's obviously a big part of this is we're limited, unfortunately, to 14 clubs if you're talking about USGA competition. So that's, to your point, it would, in most cases, for most people, it's disadvantageous to have driver, mini driver, and 3-woods. So most likely players are going either mini driver at the top or driver, mini driver, then down to say 5-wood or 7-wood, or even from there to your iron set, depending on what your tendencies are. But all right, see if I can straighten one out here. I don't think I did that. I think I,
Nope.
But also, to add on to that and talking a little bit about like the 460 type heads, I think it's safe to say that generally every manufacturer has we know that the legal size limit is 460 cc's, and every manufacturer has something that's not. So in a driver category, not everything is 460. So you can get maybe even a smaller look. We know it's not like in the Titleist, the GT4 is
I think it's
340, 350.
It's it's over 400, but it's not.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, but it's not 460.
440 or 450. Same thing as you don't have a full 460 in like the Cobra's got it, Callaway, etc. So one of the other things that you look at too is if you're going to go driver length, you can get into something like we're talking about Titleist today because it's just kind of a comparison in the brand. Not every brand is really well suited for this just yet. So we talk about TaylorMade, they've got a driver, they've got a mini driver. We talk about theirs. And then you've got your 3-woods, your strong 3-woods, your high lofted. When you start talking about like Callaway as an example, their mini driver is actually a driver shaft tip. It can be played longer. It is a little bit longer. It is a lot bigger than any of the others on the category. So it's got size, it's got length, and it's designed to be a small driver. So there are those options out there.
There's variety.
Not every company is going to want to go down that road of making, 6 different 3-wood options.
Right.
Which
there's
kind of
variety within the mini driver category already, and it's probably going to evolve quite a bit too. So, all right, we have some numbers to compare with the TSR2 Plus versus my GT280. I can already tell, that you can see how the dispersion just went like this. So for me, off the deck, we can already tell this is going to be a little bit more difficult, a little less consistent. I'll start here this time with Kevin in terms of numbers. Any big takeaways here?
Your total distance was actually less. Your spin rate was higher. Trajectory was a little bit lower. Smash factor a little lower. And these are actually all things that I'm not surprised to see trying to hit a larger club off the deck. It's not going to be easier off the deck with a mini driver, period. Right? We want to find a balance where we've got a golf club that's easier to hit off the deck and then okay to hit easier to hit off the tee, and then hopefully we can get some good shots with it off the deck. My expectation hitting my mini driver off the deck, I hope it gets up in the air. I hope it goes reasonably close to where I'm aiming it. I don't have the expectation that I have off the tee. When I hit it off
Right.
the tee, I'm expecting it to do something because that's the purpose-built machine that it actually is. I'm just going to try and use it for something else in the process.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's all about versatility and options, and so we'll get to that here in a second. I mean, ultimately, it's going to come down to this whole conversation about, if you're playing mini driver, is what's the use for you? I mean, if you are a player that hits 3-wood off the deck a lot, probably you're going to struggle with this if it's going to be a 3-wood replacement. It could be a driver replacement for you.
Right.
But anyway, yeah, I think that's your point, Kevin, about the numbers here. Like off the deck, TSR2 Plus for me is clearly better. I think with the center of gravity a little lower, that helped me get a little bit more launch on it. Now, this is going to be interesting. We're going to hit this one briefly. So this is a GT2 that actually you went and just grabbed there, Tyler. So
I did.
Talk to me about this one, because I noticed that you also grabbed a 13.5-degree head. So this could be kind of a nice comparison too.
Yeah.
Of what maybe a standard 3-wood sort of would look like in a test against a similar loft of a mini driver.
Yeah, what I was looking for here is we originally had a GT3, and so just real quick, I grabbed the GT2 because it's 13.5. What we had over there is 15, and I look at this as like, if we're going to compare 13 degrees off the deck, let's compare 13 degrees off the deck.
Yeah.
Even if it's a 13.5, we're close enough. Whereas these are 3 different styles. You had last year's model to it. Now you have the GT 280 and this is a GT2 that are both at 13.5 degrees. Let's see what something like this does. So while you're getting some swings in, I'll ask Kevin, what would you expect to see maybe differently with a more of a 3-wood in his hand versus the 280, the mini driver?
So I would think that we might get a little bit better dispersion. I would think we might also see a little more spin. Though with Drew, you just never know.
That one is so far gone.
Yeah,
I'm talking in your ear, Drew. It's hard to hit when you've got.
Oh no! We're used to this. This is just like when we're outside playing.
Yeah.
It's like we're getting in his head. Now, literally, the voices are in his head right now.
Yeah, this is true.
This is the best way to do it.
He doesn't need that he doesn't need us for that.
No, he doesn't. I also kind of put you on the spot, and this is a thing that fitters should never do to another fitter either. Guessing or predicting is tough because, I don't know how he's going to react to this, even though we've got the same shaft, the same length, and all we're doing is, and virtually the same loft, it's 13.5. How is that going to play out? Well, it's a different club, and maybe it plays out different for him. But I would agree. I would say the same thing. I would expect maybe a little tighter dispersion, a little bit more control with this, but not necessarily a whole lot of difference in the numbers.
Yeah, I would say the numbers, because the lofts are all effectively right about the same, there shouldn't be a lot of difference. However, this is a human being that is swinging this thing, so you just never know, because that human element.
Thank you, Kevin. All right, I'll get a couple more swings here. But ooh, that might be the best swing of the day there. That felt pretty good. Yeah. I will say, I'm with every one of these, I'm comfortably under that 100 feet for peak height mark that we talk about all the time.
Well, it's interesting. I realize, the first 2 shots are maybe a little
I'll just
off.
hit one more for the
A little off
just
the map
quickly.
to that.
Slightly bottom of that face, but works
So
out.
the first thing I'm looking at is you've got all 4 of those shots basically in the exact same spot.
Yeah.
I know that the first and second swings are kind of a little off on that, but this is exactly what I expected. This is what Kevin even said too, is the dispersion should kind of tighten itself up. The numbers are tightening themselves up. Even the smash factor, you've got 4.8, 4.9, 5.0, 4.8. It's more of a driver thing, but it also becomes a 3-wood thing. So we're seeing very, very similar numbers but I think it's the dispersion.
Yeah.
Even for that, you may not have had like the most in terms of ball speed on every one of these. You did actually have pretty good ball speed on every one of these. But I'm looking at it like in a dispersion factor. You also did really, really well with last model,
Yeah.
TSR2 Plus at 13 degrees.
Yeah.
And it's basically a souped up 3-wood.
Yeah, it's almost like, I think there's probably a sort of demographic out there that might need to give the TSR2 Plus maybe a look, because they might need a 13-degree club, but maybe they don't want the bigger club head. You know, there might be players that are picky about that, or they don't want, you know, 2 drivers in the bag, essentially. I mean, there's
Right.
I don't mean to pick on Kevin, but I know Kevin's kind of picky with his clubs, so I'm going to use an example where, like, he needs to have a certain thing to look at, and sometimes that could be not having 2 drivers, instead having the TSR2 Plus. But Kevin, quickly, any thoughts on the GT2 testing there that we just did?
No, I mean, it did pretty much what I would have kind of expected it to do. My question is for you. What did you experience amongst these 3 heads? Did you feel more confident with something smaller, or did you feel, you know, really good with the 280? Because that's going to be a big thing when we're fitting these clubs. Yeah, we're going to focus primarily on how it's going to be used most of the time. But if we're taking a club out of the bag and it's going to have to substitute for that 3-wood, right? We need to know that it can be used that way and that they're comfortable with it, because otherwise then it's not as useful anyway.
Right. I think I would say, obviously, of these, the GT280 to me performed worse in this particular session. But I'll also add that I hit the GT280, I'd say, good enough to where I would pull it out if I needed to on the golf course. Now, for me, that's a very rare circumstance where I'll need a club that needs to go 280, 290 yards off the deck. So for me, of these 3, the TSR2 Plus was, for me, the most comfortable. It has a certain look to it. I like the bigger sort of, it inspires more confidence to launch the ball into the sky at 13 degrees than the other ones do, I guess is what I'll give for feedback. But I was not turned away enough from the GT280 where, let's say we were going to do some off the tee testing right now. If the GT280 is, you know, the best, and I expect that it will be, if it's the best, then for me, as a player who uses 3-woods primarily off the tee, I would still take that, I guess, and put that in the bag, right? It's again, we've hinted at it already, but it's going to be about your use and what you use your 3-wood, or really any of the woods to type your bag for, and where this can slot in. So I'm right now using a 3-wood in my bag as a tee club primarily, and it's got a really shallow face to it, right? Which is where this GT280 could be beneficial.
Well, let's try this off the tee, and we'll just go in reverse order here. And
Okay. I got you.
yeah, since we've got it in your hand, and I don't need to switch anything up.
Right, let's see if I can even put a tee in that's low enough for this thing. See, that's a pretty high tee for me, actually.
Yeah, we need a little bit lower than
Do we have anything lower? Otherwise, I can.
Can we get a fresh tee?
We do.
Well, it's primarily just something that's, right now it's above the crown of the club here. I'll swing once. If I hit the ceiling, then it's not my fault. That was pretty good. A little off the heel.
Okay, let's try this.
We're gonna swap her out.
Yep, do a little switch swap.
Look at that.
Don't mention it to the production team.
Right now they're like, what are you doing? Are you kidding me? All right. Yeah, I like this
Once
a lot.
those tees
That's
get
good.
banged around a little bit, they do get a little bit tougher to push all the way down.
It's for the content, Kevin. Okay.
I got you.
Oh yeah, that was great. That should draw back nicely. Yep. So again, this is for those that are maybe just joining, we've done our testing off the turf. We're now moving to off the tee. This is the GT2 at 13.5 degrees. We were hitting it off the tee now. And that is probably the best shot of the day. Well, that's even better, I think. Yeah. That's pretty good.
It's really good. I like that.
That one's not as good. That was, if you could probably guess, that was towards the toe based on that spin rate.
Well, and not only that, but without the ball speed, you still had a little bit more carry, a little bit more total. Without the spin, it rolls out a little.
Yeah.
Let's hit one more.
All right. Yep. Yep. We already see those increases in distance and height for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, there's, just as a quick aside, right? Ball speeds up, not a ton, but on average it is. Our smash factor is a little bit better. Launch is up, spins down, carry distance is one of the longest carries so far. Good total. You want one more with that, or should we switch it out?
Yeah, I mean, I'll let Kevin
Yeah.
chime in here too, but I think there's a certain, I think everybody too probably has this, where there's a certain confidence level increase maybe when you're hitting something off the tee. I bet if you looked at my attack angle differences, there's probably a little more upward action to it, just because I know I can bottom out a little bit behind. But yeah, any other further thoughts there, Kevin?
I mean, it looks like spin varied massively off the tee versus deck. You know, carry numbers are up, total numbers are up. It did what it should do off the tee, honestly.
Yeah, that kind of sums it up. I mean, this is kind of exactly what I would be thinking, right? I mean, something that goes right at about 300 total, you know, carrying in the 270s. That's my current 3-wood is kind of what I play it for. So that's good.
And I think if we're talk about this as a where it fits in the bag, if we talk about a replacement club, if we're getting like something for the tee versus do I need some universal usage out of it. So it's like I can be off the tee or off the ground. This would probably be my pick.
Yeah.
Because if you're comfortable and you only have a few shots with that GT280, all right, fine. You got your tee shot, and every once in a while you might use it off the ground. But when you start looking at it for its usage, you're going to get more usage out of this.
Yeah, you might. Yeah, I mean, you might be right on that end. Because this is totally right. Like my 3-wood right now is G425 LST. It's 14.5. I have it tuned strong, so it's playing at about this, basically this loft, but just slightly different face angle. But
right.
But yeah, this is very, for me, this is like something I probably needed to do anyway in my bag just to see what plays best. Nonetheless, we're going to test out the other clubs and see how they do because, if I hit 5, tiny draws down the middle in a row with one of these clubs, then
let's do it.
I don't think you have the faith in me, Tyler, to do that. So.
Oh, I do. Yeah, I do. Kevin, well,
I don't think Kevin has the faith. I already know.
Kevin doesn't.
No, I know Kevin doesn't have the faith in me.
It's always that
Oh,
old
come
adage,
on,
right?
Drew.
Well,
I totally believe in you, brother.
I've seen you play.
Yeah, I know. I'm painting a nice picture up there of it's abstract art with dots and circles.
It is even as a little bit of a side note to this too. What I really like about the current lineup for all these companies, we're talking Titleist today because of what we've got in our hand here, but if we start looking at it, you've got adjustability, you've got choices, you've got loft choices, you've got where you can move the weights around, you've got shaft choices. We're at a point in terms of golf and the equipment where we have as many choices as we've ever had to kind of get that fine tuning. So that's one of the reasons why you got to get in and get a fit.
Yep.
Even if you know what you want, great. That it just maybe solidifies that mentally. Is like give us that confidence. Yes, this is what I thought was going to happen. It is happening, and we can go down that route. And if it's not, that's okay too, because every company's got different options, and maybe it's just a different club from a different company.
Yep. All right, so GT280, Same shafts we've been using, just going off the tee now.
Yep.
I might hook some. No, it's fine.
Yeah.
That was kind of that high toe area there, and
Sure.
that would be the result, right?
It's your longest carry, probably your best total, I would imagine. 310, 311.
Ooh, now that could get really bad going left. Oh no, that's not too bad.
Yeah, outside of direction. Yeah, outside of direction, it wasn't
Wow.
the worst.
See, that right there is probably an example of why the mini driver can be beneficial if you primarily go off
Yep.
the tee, because that to me felt like such a heel ball. And to see it still, plenty of distance. I'm definitely in play, right? What is that?
25 yards
Yeah,
left.
25 yards left, so call it 70 feet off target to the left, which might put me in the rough on most holes, but I'm certainly in play.
Yeah.
So that one is an example. Is if you're playing it off the tee, having the bigger head is a little more forgiving. Whereas with a 3-wood there, that ball, could be much worse off.
Well, and if you take this in a driver perspective, that actually had some serious ball speed. That was your fastest ball speed I've seen yet, I think. But it also had a lot of spin, and the spin kept it in the air.
Yeah.
So having that launch and spin actually is a benefit, even on a miss. So when you get something where you really miss it badly on a driver and it loses all of its ball speed or it spins way too much. So we're talking about a smaller sweet spot,
Yeah.
but much bigger than what a normal 3-wood would
Right.
be. Yeah.
Kevin, are these looking like your numbers with mini driver?
No.
You don't have to be subtle about it, Kevin. We know your numbers are better than this.
That was a good ball.
I don't have the benefit of youth, so
You have the benefit
I
of
have
wisdom.
to take
Wait a
what
minute.
You just hit that thing 316. I hit one 296 the other day and was jumping for joy. So there's
What was the-
20 more yards that you got just because you're young and strong and fit.
Well, fit is quite a statement.
What was the
to make
post
about
from
me.
some morning testing of you the other day on Instagram? Was that club speed at 112,
Yeah, he's got it.
right?
Yeah.
Or was it
Oh, yeah.
117?
So, no, it was 112. It was 112. I was playing on the simulator, playing a hole that is out in Utah with an 88-foot drop off the tee, and I flew one 397 because it's also up in the altitude. So
Yeah.
I'm padding my numbers by playing places
So that's
with altitude.
yeah. He can just tell people, I just carried it 390 or whatever.
I don't know when we're going to get a store out in Utah, but when we do, Kevin might be the first fitter there.
I'll be the first one in. Absolutely.
That was a little off the bottom of the face, I think. Yep. We could do the old quadrant of death spiel on that with that explanation there. See, that's what happens when you hit it low in the face. Spin goes way up. You're going to
Yep.
lose distance. That's the case for any golf club, pretty much, right?
Yeah.
But you
right,
know
I'm
what, Drew?
gonna,
Here's the
one
thing,
more
right?
here
With
after
this
this.
bigger head,
What's that, Kevin?
with this bigger head that we've got going here, the great thing about that is the mishits are spinning more. When we
Yeah.
mishit and it spins more, if that face is pointing hard left or hard right, you're not going to lose it as far when that spin
Yep.
comes up. The faster guys on tour they want enough spin that they've got more forgiveness. If you give somebody a miss at 1700 RPM when they're swinging 120, 125 miles an hour, that ball is gonzo, right? It's just gonna keep going whatever direction that club's pointed, and it's not gonna stop till something nasty makes it stop. So
Right.
I like the fact that you're getting more spin off these mishits because it's making the mishits not as bad.
Yeah.
Well, and we would say in a fitting too, spin is good until there's too much.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's kind of until there's too much. I don't know that we'll ever look at this and go, well, we want the lowest spin ever. Spin creates lift, and lift creates distance. It's a carry distance. That's why I talk about this as all the numbers are seeing so far are just carry numbers, not total numbers. We have that.
Okay, that's what I was afraid of.
Right.
See, that's the difference there, Kevin. Is that one was off the toe. This is the perfect, opposite example of what just happened. So you go off the toe and a little high on the face, the spin goes down, and that's a miss, and it, it's tougher to control.
Yep, it is.
But just don't do that.
And that's exactly
Yeah,
what Kevin. That's just what Kevin was talking about. It's just what exactly kind of what I was talking about too. Is I was like, we can never get enough spin until it's too much. So we always want spin that keeps the ball in the air. It keeps it flying straighter for longer.
Let me hit one more with this, and then we'll hit the TSR2 Plus, and then we'll get a full look at all the data here. All right, this will be interesting because that was very high on the face. Okay.
All right, Kevin, we'll go to you first in certain terms of the numbers.
Goodness
here.
gracious. Well, we got another one in the parking lot.
Yeah.
All right. So, well, we look at dispersion, and if this was a real live fitting, I would be a little worried with this golf club right now, right? We saw some really good, and then we saw some, I don't know about this,
Right.
Distance is definitely there, but the dispersion isn't quite what we saw with the GT2. So given your numbers with the GT2, both off the deck and off the tee, for right now, I would certainly lean way toward that versus the Mini.
Yep.
Seeming like that's the best option so far is the GT2 at 13.5 degrees. And I think there's a couple of comments on the YouTube chat talking about the fitted shaft. So now we haven't done a true shaft fitting, and that's not what today's necessarily for.
Right.
But this is a shaft that probably fits me pretty well.
Yeah.
I play the same model in my driver, just 10 grams lighter. Yep. So this is a 75X. I have a 65X in my driver, so it should be a pretty good fit shaft-wise. So.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things that we see, Kevin could talk to this too, is in terms of shafts, we get a lot of players where they'll say, I got driver shaft, I want kind of fairway shaft or 3-wood shaft. We'll kind of match those up. But then there's also kind of that specialty for it, right? So let's say, for instance, that this shaft is working really well in the driver. Doesn't necessarily mean that we have to have it in the next club either. It's a tendency. We see a lot of that. But it's also where we start to see even the professionals is like what's in their bag starts to change. It could change companies. You might have, and I don't want to slight anyone, there's a lot of shaft companies out there, but you might see 2 different shaft companies or 3 or 4 different shaft companies amongst the clubs in a bag. It kind of, for us anyway, and I look at this as the ultimate for me is, what does it do for you? I don't care what the number in terms of like what it says on the club, if it says 15 or 14 or 12 or whatever. What does it do for us?
Yeah.
That's always the end goal.
And how does it feel? Right? I mean, if we put a shaft in there, we take 3 shafts that are designed to do the same basic thing, and one of them feels way better and is more confidence inspiring, that's typically going to make the player play better anyway. You can always go off straight numbers, but I prefer to do a combination of feel and numbers.
Right, that's a good point.
Yeah.
So we're back with TSR2 Plus here to wrap up the testing. And again, I'm going to just mention again how this club head looks. It's definitely like a bigger footprint, but in a way it's confidence inspiring if you're talking about, since it is 13 degrees aloft, you kind of need a little bit of maybe this is the wrong word, but encouragement that like, hey, this is things that get in the air. And there's a little bit of mass behind the club face that promotes that. So. Ooh, that was high on the face. Should spin quite low. Oh my goodness. To see that result is very pleasantly surprising. That was quite the...
Yeah, actually.
Yeah, wow.
Launches at 15, spins at 19. Yeah.
Yep. I got this thing. you know, it could be an alignment thing in the bay or whatever reason, but I'm starting every single ball just a little bit right. Just have that in to out path, and then sometimes it draws back, sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah. Well, and Kevin can talk to this too. We talk a little bit about what's happening with the swing itself, but the majority of the motions that you're going to make they're kind of presets within the body.
Yeah.
There's only certain motions you're going to be able to make, and if you get comfortable, it's repeatable, and it does a predicted, gives you kind of a predicted result. Like, you're going to go with that.
Right. It's actually, I'm looking at, well, yeah, I guess this is only a couple shots, but I imagine my face angle or my club path across all the clubs is probably in that 6 to 7 inch range. That's where I've been living.
It has been. Yep.
Ooh, that's out to the right. Jeez, I gotta turn the club over a little bit.
Well, and you can push that tee down a little too. Push the blue part.
Yeah.
That might help.
Could help. All right, let's square her up here. Nope, didn't square up.
Okay.
Release the hands.
Release the hands, he says.
Release the hands. I would agree. Let it turn over.
Hitting it hard.
Should be. Nope.
That's the same shot every time, at least.
Yep.
No, it's getting consistent.
Yep.
All right, let's hit maybe one more here. But I think in terms of this test, if there's a winner, I think we already have one. That's the one. Finally figured it out.
There it is. It's actually one of your best of the day too.
Yeah.
From a ball speed perspective, that was really good.
Oh my goodness. Hey, that dispersion was really good for a while.
Yeah.
Just that it was all about 40 yards right of where I wanted it to be.
Well, so let's do this. There we go.
No, don't do that to me. That's mean, Tyler. Don't do that.
Yep. They're in the middle of the lake.
Yeah, thanks.
But you know, actually, for what it's worth, this is not a bad way of looking at it. Well, you know,
No,
when you have
it's not.
So this is, you know, in TrackMan, when we're doing the testing here, this is one of the options we have for the view,
Yeah.
the site. And this is PGA, what was it, PGA National, I think?
Yep.
But what's nice about this is to kind of put this to the test as we talk about consistency. We talk about, all right, am I going to use this because I want to kind of get I got some holes that are a little tighter and I don't need this really long, super, like, I've got something in the way, I got a bunker here, I got a pond over there, whatever. One of the things we've seen from tour averages is that the average number of fairways hit for a tour player with a driver is about 50%. And the average number of fairways hit with any other club is about 50%. Well, like 50% is just what it is.
Yeah.
It's like we're not necessarily going to just automatically increase because we have a shorter shaft that we think has more control or a smaller head that we might think we maybe hit a little bit more precise.
Yeah.
This still looks at the complete picture, which is
Yeah.
why we are doing this.
So I wanted to pose something, especially to Kevin here, so, because we have in the YouTube chat right now, we have kind of some questions about, from Pure Power 333 says mini drivers seem to be a money grab and harder than 3-wood hit off the deck. I don't see a reason for mini drivers, just a money grab from the golf companies is the claim there. So I want to give Kevin the floor here because I know Kevin is a professional player. He's one of the, he's an elite golfer. He's played in senior majors. He would not put a mini driver in the bag if it didn't serve a purpose and have a reason to be there. So, Kevin, can you maybe give another sort of response to that, like we already talked about the uses for a mini driver for you, why it works, and why you've seen people using it as well?
Yeah, I mean, I'm psycho. I've got driver yips, and I've had them since 2008, and they're never going to go away. So there are certain circumstances on a golf course where I cannot pull driver out of the bag because I will not make a positive golf swing. And to me, the mini driver, I have mine cut down to 42 3/4 inches, which is shorter than a standard 3-wood. I typically tee it just above the ground, and then I just rip at it. And it's geared to not go right because my driver's geared not to go left. And if I've got trouble down the right-hand side, that's what flips me out. I can swing it off the tee, and I don't have to worry nearly like I would, and I can make a positive golf swing. So for people that really do struggle with drivers, they see that big head and they just go, man, I struggle with this so bad. It's a visual difference that they don't, should put them a little bit more at ease. And if it does, then awesome, right? So, and then for those who, you get some guys that they're not struggling with driver, but they want something that's maybe a little easier to hit off the tee on the holes where they don't need to hit it as far. And if they're willing to take a 3-wood out of the equation, which is probably not going to carry both, and they find that the benefit outweighs the challenge of hitting it off the deck, that's great for those people too. Look, I was somebody that if you'd said 3 or 4 years ago that in 2025 mini drivers and 7-woods were going to take over the golf world, I'd have told you you're nuts. But yet here we are, right? And I don't think they're going away. And it's been an interesting money grab. I'm not going to say it's not been, but I'm also not going to say that it doesn't have its place, because it absolutely does. And I'm living proof of that, because it has really changed the way I can approach golf courses. My mini driver straight up won me the Pennsylvania Open in 2023. I hit it 21 times in 3 days, and I missed one fairway. That's won me the golf tournament.
Yeah. So I think there's a and kind of starting to conclude here. I know we've talked about the numbers the whole time, and for those that are maybe just joining, this will be posted on the YouTube channel. You can rewatch the whole thing and scrub through. There's, for the longest time in golf, there were drivers that were made, and then there were 3-woods. And there was never really much of anything made or designed to fit between there. I know, like you, Kevin, were playing a strong 3-wood for a time, with a strong driver loft down to like even 5 or 6 or 7 degrees, and then you'd have a strong 3-wood. And so this perfectly matched what you needed, but this is just a different way of looking at the top of the bag. There's obviously the use you talked about, players that need something a little bit shorter off the tee, more control on some of those skinnier fairways. There's also a lot of players that need probably a 13-degree club off the tee as their driver because they just don't swing fast enough to get, say, a 10.5 degree airborne enough. So I guess in starting to conclude here, Tyler, is there any further thoughts you have? We have some comments. Michael made a good comment there in terms of reducing those big, wide mishits with the driver, what the mini driver can do. So further final thoughts from you.
Well, I look at it in a couple of different aspects. First of all, we talk about golf companies. They're in business, right? There's an evolution of engineering, and we didn't have certain clubs that until they were created, engineered, or made. We have specialty clubs in every area. We have specialty chippers and specialty wedges and specialty irons, and all of a sudden the category starts to expand. We've seen mini drivers. They've been around for decades upon decades. Our old drivers back in the day, they were mini. That was just the driver. The 280 right now is essentially very, very similar in size and shape. Similar, but not exact, to like the original 975 by Titleist, one of their very first metal wood series. I'd call it the most popular wood series that they'd started with many years ago. It's like we've had these clubs around for a long time. It is a money grab because these companies are in business. That's the whole point. And so what we're doing is we're just trying to kind of sift through all of these options and narrow that down to find out what works in the bag.
Yeah.
And that's really what I look at is it's like we all have our own different tastes. So when we go to the grocery store, our cart is going to be filled with a lot of different things, from person to person. That's what we're looking at. We're just kind of looking at what are the ingredients to your swing and your game, and what are we going to put in that shopping cart. And it's great because now we just have options, and that's really what it becomes. It's like if you're a mini driver person, good. If you're not, great. That doesn't matter.
And this was not supposed to be a stream to say, hey, go get a mini driver, because you have to get a mini driver.
But I love the fact that we had the opportunity to kind of go through them. We, as in just the three of us alone, have all had a lot of different options, and we've tried them, we've played them, we have success, and we have failures with them. That's the whole point, is kind of getting out there and seeing what sticks. And then when you do find it, go with it. It's like, don't worry about being the trendsetter. If you are the trendsetter, great. And if I do see customers come in and say, well, I can't. Honest to God, I've had this. Can't have that club because my buddy has that club. Like, really? Okay. So do what's best for you.
Hey, Kevin said he was psycho.
Yeah.
So
That's true.
I mean,
Yeah.
It was Kevin's buddy,
Look.
actually.
It doesn't matter what it is if it works. Freddie Couples is carrying a 6 hybrid, right? And he made an eagle with it at the Masters. Tommy Fleetwood carries a 9 wood, right?
Yep.
David Coe carries a 9 wood. It's about what works, and these are purpose-driven tools that are designed to have a particular use. And if you've got 14 tools in the bag and you've got something that can cover 2 areas, then that's a bonus, right? And maybe that's for you and maybe that's not for you, but we can only have 14, so we just got to make it work as best we possibly can.
right. Yeah, that's a great way to put it, actually, is kind of wrapping this up. This was kind of a look at an area in the bag. You only have 14 clubs, so we wanted to test a couple different options that might be there for players at the top, near, or at their driver spots. So, well, we're at that top of the hour here. We've been in here for an hour, so I wanted to first of all, thank Kevin for joining us from the Columbia store there. I can hear some fittings going on around you, so we'll let you get back to work there. And also thank Tyler and the team here at Minnetonka for having us in here. This was a blast. Remember, golfers, every Thursday, 1 p.m. Central, we're going to be live on our YouTube channel, so make sure you're subscribed. You're tuning in every Thursday at this time, and we'll see you next week.
Keep your grooves clean and stay razor sharp.
Drew, cut your path in half. Your life will get a lot easier.